this be one of the best moments of your life. You're listening to the Business Mirror Podcast for a broader look on business with Senior Editor Dennis Estopace.
Good day, I'm Dennis Estopace, and our topic for today is the possibility of a bilateral free trade agreement between the Philippines and South Korea. The journalist behind the story on free trade agreement is Elijah Feliz Rosales. For the text version, please go to www.businessmirror.com.ph and search for free trade agreement. The story by Mr. Rosales was published on May 16, 2019. Let's begin with the story. The trade war between the United States and China has now entered a new phase, and economies reliant on their supply chain like the Philippines can become collateral damage. This has prompted Manila to find a way to shield the country from the repercussions of a US-China showdown. In a news briefing in May, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Deputy Governor Diwa C. Gunigundo revealed one of the country's strategies to survive the face-off between the United States and China. Gunigundo said forging bilateral free trade agreements with key economic partners such as South Korea will secure for the Philippine markets for its product in the face of a collapsing multilateral trading system. For Trade Assistant Secretary Allen B. Kepti, this is a sound strategy, considering the fact that South Koreans know the Philippines more than any other nationality in the world. More and more Filipinos are also becoming fascinated with Korean culture and cuisine, as evidenced by the mushrooming of restaurants offering samgyeopsal, a popular Korean dish. The Philippines and South Korea, which fought side by side during the Korean War, currently enjoy a strong bilateral relationship. The Philippines was the first Asian country to respond to the call of the United Nations Security Council to deploy forces to the Korean Peninsula during Korea's hour of need. The government sent the Philippine Expeditionary Forces to Korea, composed of 5 battalion combat teams. In the economic front, Seoul continues to help the Philippines via Official Development Assistance, or ODA. Also, South Koreans were the country's top visitors last year, according to data from the Department of Trade and Industry. The DTI said a total of 1.5 million South Koreans visited the archipelago in 2018. They accounted for 22.28% of total tourist arrivals. South Korea's record as top tourist market for the Philippines earned it recognition from the Department of Tourism, called the Visit the Philippines Award, at the recent culminating activity of Mission Philippines, the Business Mirror Envoy and Expat Awards, which is the first and only recognition awards for the country's development partners. The same trend of South Korea topping arrivals in the Philippines was seen in 2016 and 2017, when tourists from the East Asian country totaled 1.47 million and 1.6 million respectively. Trade Assistant Secretary Gepti said the existence of respectable people-to-people relations is one compelling reason to negotiate a free trade agreement with South Korea. Gepti explained, quote, "They are the number one tourists in the country, and they have a lot of products now being marketed here in the Philippines," end quote. South Korea has been one of the Philippines' most significant trading partners in recent years. Merchandise trade between the two economies posted a compounded annual growth rate of 15.7% between 2014 and 2018. Figures from the Philippine Statistics Authority revealed that bilateral trade improved in 2018 by an annualized rate of 7.11% to $13.7 billion from $12.79 billion. The Philippines mainly exports industrial products, including electronic parts and manufactures, and farm goods such as bananas to South Korea. However, the latest data by the Philippine Statistics Authority revealed shipments are generally declining in the past 5 years. Exports to South Korea in 2018 fell 41.33% to almost $3 billion from $4.33 billion in 2017. This is a double-digit contraction in shipments of electronics and manufactures. Banana exports jumped to almost 204,000 metric tons, with a value of more than $203 million from 176,555 metric tons, valued at $176.55 million. Overall, shipments to South Korea recorded a contraction of 0.2% in compounded annual growth rate from 2014 to 2018. This contraction was coupled with a surge of 21.7% in imports from South Korea during the same period, as imports in 2018 increased 31.91% to $11.16 billion from just $8.46 billion in 2017. Manila's trade deficit with Seoul more than doubled to $8.62 billion from $4.13 billion. Gepti, who is also the government's lead negotiator in talks with South Korea, is hoping a free trade agreement will reduce the trade gap. According to Gepti, and quote, "Among others, we cannot really discard the fact that when it comes to FTA, market access is one interest that we have to pursue, particularly for those products of interest that we have," end quote. Gepti said in an interview with the Business Mirror that these products would include agricultural products as well as tropical fruits. More than agricultural goods, the Philippines has also other industrial products that it can push also to the South Korean market. Senen Perlada, director of the DTI's Export Marketing Bureau, said the Philippines will push for the elimination of both tariff and non-tariff measures on farm exports in its FTA negotiations with South Korea. Perlada told the Business Mirror that, quote, "Among other export interests, we would like South Korea to further open their market for Philippine agricultural products. In particular, we would like to make the bilaterals a venue to manifest our strong interest for South Korea to lower, if not eliminate, tariffs on banana exports, mango exports, processed fruit products such as mango purees and other fruit purees," end quote. Perlada added that non-tariff measures on these products and other agricultural products must be removed. Trade Assistant Secretary Gepti also said the trade deal could pave the way for more South Korean orders of products from the regions. He argued that local craft and furniture makers will have a good platform to market their products if a free trade agreement is concluded with Seoul. Gepti said, and quote, "Also, we have a lot of products, especially furniture, that are made from the provinces, and an FTA could enhance their export opportunities to South Korea."
Welcome back. You're still listening to the Business Mirror podcast. For a broader look on business with Senior Editor Dennis Estopase.
On top of market access agenda, the government is hoping a trade deal will also lead to more capital inflows from South Korea. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority showed approved investments from South Korea have been rapidly declining since peaking to 23.16 billion pesos in 2015. On an annualized basis, South Korean investments slumped 30.35% to 16.13 billion in 2016, crashed 79.1% to 3.37 billion pesos in 2017, and plunged 44.21% to 1.88 billion pesos in 2018. According to Gepti, quote, "If there's one thing that is very important in an FTA, you can, in a way, create a more stable investment environment in the country, which is very vital. In other words, in terms of laws, rules, regulations, arrangements, you define that," end quote. Gepti added negotiating parties can agree on investment areas they intend to prioritize to boost capital exchange. The data from the Board of Investments reported the highest funded South Korean projects approved by the investment body between 2014 and 2018 were mostly in the utility sector. Seoul has a 35% share in the first phase and 100% share in the second phase of the 5.78 billion peso 48 megawatt solar power project of Del Sol Energy CGS Incorporated, which is in General Santos City. Moreover, Seoul also has a 40% equity in the 11.64 billion 160 megawatt solar power development of El Elyon Power Plant Philippines Incorporated in Sarangani. South Korea also has a 20% share in the 8.37 billion peso Bulacan Bulk Water Supply Project of Luzon Clean Water Development Corp. Under the concession agreement with the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System. The project has generated an estimated 1,089 jobs, the highest among South Korean investments approved by the BOI over the past 5 years. In expanding South Korea's portfolio in the Philippines, Trade Undersecretary Seferino Rodolfo said the government is amenable to providing tax incentives to developers of electric vehicle infrastructure, such as charging stations. In an interview with reporters in April, Rodolfo said South Korea has many e-vehicle brands that are respected in the industry and manufacturers might be interested in producing them in the Philippines. In exchange, the government is willing to develop the market and put up the infrastructure for electric vehicles. Undersecretary Rodolfo explained, and quote, "If, say, we will help you develop the market and infrastructure for electric vehicles here, would you be able to assemble them here? In particular, we are interested in electric motors. We are also interested in batteries because we have nickel and copper wires," end quote. The government can provide tax holidays and incentives for developers of electric vehicle infrastructure, such as charging stations. Further, it is open to reducing tariffs on automotive inputs needed in the production of parts and assembly of units of electric vehicles. According to Undersecretary Rodolfo, quote, "We can include in the investment priorities plan the putting up of charging stations as well as other infrastructure. If they say they could probably make the Philippines as assembly center, but they need lower tariff rates on particular e-vehicle parts, we are open to that. We really need to be more practical and examine line by line what it is they need," end quote. These compromises on tariffs and incentives can be discussed in formal FTA negotiations. According to GEPTI, Manila can capitalize on its young labor force to attract more research and development cooperation with Seoul. Trade Assistant GEPTI said, and quote, "That is one important consideration in this free trade agreement. We want to come up with an FTA that will also address and enhance the collaboration of the two countries when it comes to research and development, innovation, and other technological development. With our young, dynamic, and highly skilled workforce, definitely we can be competitive in these areas," end quote. However, lawyer Anthony Abad of Abad Alcantara and Associates pointed out that the government has to prove in FTA talks the government can manage and protect large investments, especially with what happened to Hanjin Heavy Industries and Construction Philippines Incorporated. Hanjin Heavy, the shipbuilder, in January sought help from the courts after struggling to pay $412 million in loans to 5 domestic banks. In an email to the Business Mirror, Abad said Hanjin Shipyard was a Korean corporation and the biggest foreign investor in the Subic Bay Freeport Zone. Abad said, and quote, "Its corporate bankruptcy is the largest bankruptcy ever recorded in the Philippines. Thus, we present a risk profile to Korean investors with respect to large investments based on our track record, and it is expected that a decline in capital inflow would occur," end quote. It is safe to assume then, Abad said, that South Korea will ask for investor protection terms in an FTA, such as fair compensation in cases of expropriation, mandatory investor-state dispute settlement, as well as a general push toward keeping the dispute resolution mechanism away from Philippine control. Abad said, and quote, "What the Philippines should then focus on is to mitigate these investor protection terms to ensure that the Philippines is still adequately able to protect its own rights, while at the same time assuring that foreign investor rights can be protected. In addition, the Philippines should push to make it easier for free movement of investors and investments in the country," end quote. In spite of the financial trouble Hanjin ran into, Abad said the Philippines remains to be an attractive destination for South Korean investments. The trade expert said that in 2018, Hyundai Motor Company signed a letter of intent exploring the possibility of opening a vehicle assembly plant in the Philippines. Proper incentives and investor protection provisions will increase the likelihood of the same pushing through.
Welcome back. You're still listening to the Business Mirror podcast. For a broader look on business with Senior Editor Dennis Estopase.
Another provision the Philippines is eyeing to put on the table in FTA negotiations with South Korea is trade in services, GEPTI told the Business Mirror. GEPTI said, and quote, "That is a possibility, the inclusion of trade in services provision, because it will be a comprehensive agreement not just limited to trade in goods. It will cover investments, so we might have trade in services too," end quote. Former Tariff Commissioner George N. Manzano said a deal on services will relax requirements and streamline procedures for Filipinos applying for work in South Korea. With the services agreement in hand, the East Asian country could become a labor haven for Manila's young workforce, especially to those who specialize in the fields of research and innovation. Data from the Foreign Affairs Department reported there are at least 70,000 Filipinos working in South Korea as of 2017. Manzano said in an interview with the Business Mirror, end quote, "Our negotiators can put that on the table. They could ask the South Korean government to relax requirements for a working visa to allow easier entry for our laborers under a trade in services provision in the agreement," end quote. Further, a deal on services will provide investors with a more stable and predictable business environment, according to GEPTI, as they can easily tap the labor markets of both the Philippines and South Korea under a liberalized services regime. GEPTI said, and quote, "That is one of our primary objectives in this FTA. From the perspective of any businessman for that matter, anybody who wants to invest in a particular country, they want a certain degree of stability and predictability," end quote. Abad has another agenda in mind. If South Korea could be a labor haven for Filipinos, he believes the Philippines could be a retirement haven for South Koreans. Abad explained, and quote, "The Philippines should likewise actively try to negotiate for ease of movement in persons and travel and tourism promotion. The Philippines still remains a top tourist destination for most Koreans, with a reliably high travel volume for tourism purposes. This is a potentially growth industry, for example, with respect to the retirement visa and retirement home industry." End quote. Turning the country into a retirement place for South Koreans will be beneficial to the Philippine Retirement Authority, or PRA, as it seeks to increase the number of foreign retirees here to 80,000 by 2020. Data from the PRA showed there are at least more than 53,000 foreign retirees in the Philippines as of 2017. Most of these foreign retirees are from China, South Korea, Taiwan, India, Japan, the United States, and Australia. According to Abad, improvements in free movement of people would encourage not only more Koreans to pursue retirement in the Philippines, but also for these retirees to consider investing their savings in micro, small, and medium enterprises in the Philippines. Hence, considerations of ease of movement for those seeking retirement visas would be very beneficial. Foreign retirees can apply for a Special Resident Retirees Visa, which is offered by the PRA. The Special Resident Retirees Visa is a special non-immigrant visa for foreigners who intend to make the Philippines their retirement home or investment destination. The benefits of obtaining a Special Resident Retirees Visa include indefinite stay with multiple entry and exit privileges, exemption from certain taxes and travel permits, and entitlement to health benefits, among others. However, think tank Ibon Foundation warned the government to tread carefully in negotiating an FTA with South Korea. In a statement sent to the Business Mirror, Ibon Foundation said a trade deal could restrict the country's policy space by legally preventing economic development programs supporting and protecting local industries. Liberalization of investment areas could hamper the development of several sectors, including agriculture, according to Ibon. The Ibon Foundation statement said the government's framework in these deals is rapid and comprehensive liberalization and strong rights for foreign investors at the expense of government regulation in the public interest. Ibon Foundation said this globalization framework is, however, outdated and proven unable to deliver broad-based and sustainable economic progress. Nearly 4 decades of trade and investment liberalization has weakened local agriculture and industries, limited job creation, repressed incomes, and worsened poverty. Ibon Foundation called on the government to pursue first an economic agenda that will enhance local industries before negotiating bilateral and multilateral FTAs. The Philippines at present only has one bilateral trade deal, which is the Philippines-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, and which entered into force in 2008. However, as a member of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, it has market access to China, South Korea, India, Australia, and New Zealand. The Philippines also has an FTA with the European Free Trade Association, which is made up of Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. The Philippines also has preferential tariff schemes to the United States and the European Union. The government is completing domestic procedures, mostly consultation with stakeholders, before sitting on the negotiating table with Seoul's trade officials. The agenda is clear for Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez. This trade deal with South Korea should provide local players, particularly farmers, greater market access to South Korea. Both parties agreed to do their best to conclude negotiations by November, in time for the commemorative summit between the ASEAN and South Korea. As for Trade Assistant Secretary Gepti, who will lead the Philippine delegation, it will be fairly easy to make the pitch on the negotiating table. Gepti said trading partners are expected to have an interest in the Philippines, especially since the Philippines is one of the fastest growing economies in the region. And this can be dangled in free trade agreement talks. According to Gepti, there are a lot of positive developments now in the country in terms of investments, infrastructure, and manufacturing that you would expect any trading partner to have an interest in the Philippines. That could be one of the reasons we are one of the emerging economies.
Thank you for listening to the Business Mirror podcast. For a broader look on business, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Business Mirror. Until next time.